Welcome to the very, very first episode of the Two Fitness Ninnies podcast. My name is Mark. That guy there is Shane. We are the Two Fitness Ninnies. Hello, Shane.
Yeah, we are.
Yes, we are.
How's it going?
Great. So I'm recording from my gym in Titusville, Florida, MOEfit, and you are recording from near your gym. Where are you at?
I'm recording from near the gym. Yep, I'm actually at home. The gym is in Suntree, Florida, just north of Melbourne.
Cool. So our thought for this podcast, we're going to try to do this weekly. Try to, but we're not going to stick to any strict thing. We're going to do it. We're both gym owners, so we have, and you're a real estate agent on top of that. Yep. So we have tons of time to record flexible podcasts.
Yeah. And all the spare time.
Yeah. So we figured it would make sense to talk about things that, are relatively make sense as far as fitness goes. I have a habit of going on horrible tangents. We'll discover that here in just a second, I'm sure.
It's perfect.
So today, what I figured we'd talk about just for our very, very first episode of the podcast is misconceptions about fitness when it comes to specifically to losing weight if you happen to be an extremely overweight person at the beginning of your journey. And I think it's a good topic because a lot of people who are extremely overweight are willing to think almost anything is true. I think a lot of times their mindset can be skewed.
Sure. Yeah, they want almost anything to be true too, especially if they actually care and they're trying to lose some weight. They a lot of the myths and fads and stuff they sell like a easier out, you know what I'm saying, or something that's easier than what it actually is or what it looks like. So it's like, yeah, who wouldn't want that to be true? I can eat all the fats in the world I want and I'm gonna lose weight, or you name it, and it's like, yeah, sure. So
I'll tell you a little anecdote, though. Here at my gym for a while, it was the Carnivore Diet was a fad. 4 or 5 of our members were doing it. Sure. And the Carnivore Diet is nothing but meat, basically, meat and fat, and that's it, and water. Yep. So meat, fat, and water, and that is it. So a couple of people were talking, and we had some of the armchair scientists here as well, who were throwing all the big words around and talking about how amazing the Carnivore Diet was. So I did it as an experiment. I did it. It was the month of May I think it was the month of May in 2019. Or month of March 2019.
I remember when you did it.
I did it for 30 days straight. And I lost 35 pounds.
Nice.
Well, no, it wasn't. I looked like a...
Okay.
Yeah, everything that's coming to mind, I can't say. I was really skinny.
Yeah, sure.
I looked dilapidated. I did not look like how I looked. It took me a while to gain all the muscle mass. I lost a lot of muscle mass.
Thank God.
And
Ethiopian marathon runner. There you go.
There you go. Thanks, man.
Yeah, for sure.
But it wasn't healthy. It wasn't healthy because I wasn't eating carbs I wasn't having any carbs. So therefore, I can only imagine how my insulin sensitivity suffered during that because I wasn't having any fiber either.
That's a good point.
Yeah. But anyway, yes, I lost weight. Was I healthy? No, not even anywhere near approaching that.
Yeah. And that's not a very sustainable rate of fat loss, and it's not like, I only ate meat and therefore something magical enabled me to lose fat. It's like, no, I quit eating everything else, therefore I went into an extreme calorie deficit and lost a ton of weight. It's interesting you mentioned the insulin sensitivity and how that probably went through the floor, and that plays a major role in getting glycogen into the muscle and muscle mass and a lot of the good gains that come from an insulin spike. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and then not to mention the lack of phytochemicals and lack of micronutrients you get from your fruits and veggies and everything else. So yeah, it sounds fun.
It was fun. Like I would literally go to there was a diner on the way home, and I would get on DoorDash and order for pickup. I would order 20 pieces of bacon, and they knew me for a while as like the bacon guy. I'd walk in and they're like, "Oh, here's the bacon guy again," and I'd get my to-go box with 20 pieces of bacon. I would just chow on 20 pieces of bacon while I was driving home.
That's funny.
I got sick of bacon. If I once had
that's a ton of bacon. Yeah, I once had a pizza delivery guy show up at my house unannounced because every time I ordered a pizza, I ordered a cannoli. And that day they were making these cannolis in a croissant with like a cinnamon sugar on them. And he was like, "I just thought of you and I wanted to bring you one."
Oh my God.
I was like, okay, time to go on a diet.
Time to make some changes.
Yeah.
Okay, so each of us came up with three common misconceptions about losing weight, and these should pertain especially to somebody who's substantially overweight and about to begin the journey of losing weight. So you came up with 3, and I came up with 3. Let's start rifling through these. What was your first one?
My first one was that running is a good idea. And not that it's a bad idea. I just and honestly, I don't know if any of mine are like good or bad, but it's just like, man, there's some things to consider with each of these, you know. And so I think a lot of folks, it's like when they think of dieting, they think like, oh, I have to get up early in the morning and run, and I have to go do cardio, and I have to do all this stuff. And so I think some of our like considerations there is like running is already really cyclical of a movement. You know, I mean, you're striking the ground thousands and thousands of times as you're moving, and running has a very high injury rate to begin with. You know, it's whether or not like being overweight and running causes an increase in injury. I don't know if that's like super well founded, but when you're going to go do something that already has an injury rate of like 85% of runners experience injuries, and then you're going to add on top of that you're a really heavy human, and you're going to do this sport with a bunch of impact and very cyclical motions and stuff like that, I think you're just kind of begging for an injury.
Do you think that's societal in some regard? Because running is considered like the thing to do, whereas I think something like just simply walking instead of running doesn't have that cool factor that running does.
100%. I think so, 100%. And it's funny that you mentioned walking, because I think walking is like the most awesome underrated exercise there is. So I would definitely start there with walking, and then kind of move on up the scale a little bit. And one, depending on how heavy we're talking, like some of those folks, I mean, there's a really big strain on essentially your cardiovascular system with running. It really taxes and hits it a lot, so depending on how heavy we're talking, it's like, it's like just run this by our doctor, make sure it's okay, especially with maybe even a lot of the fitness endeavors that they want to get into, depending on how much weight they have there, and make sure they get that cleared, first, and then probably starting with something like walking, and then maybe walking with weight if they want to increase that, right? Like, I think we're both members of ruck clubs, or leaders of ruck clubs, I guess we are, and so it's like, throwing a little bit of weight and going for a walk, it increases the heart rate. It's not super impactful on the joints. There's not a lot of bounding and stuff, and it almost has very similar cardio benefits to running, just without all the hefty impact and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it keeps the heart rate too in a nice, safe, comfortable, but still elevated zone. Maybe like 110, 120, 125, somewhere in that range is a great range.
Yeah, and it's nothing too. It's not crazy, right? Like like 120, it ain't no walk in the park, but you're not like super strained either. It's like it's kind of that sweet spot where it's nice and you're cruising.
And you can sustain that for half an hour, 45 minutes without injuring yourself, doing something really bad to yourself.
Yeah, 100%. So for me, I felt like that running just went hand in hand with fat loss diets. It's like, oh, I'm going to start dieting, and therefore I have to start running. And I see that in a lot of folks. So.
Yeah, the interesting thing too about running is that, and you said fat loss specifically, but weight loss is a more general way to put it. And the thing about running too is that if you're not careful with other aspects of your life, diet specifically, running can actually. Yeah, you're going to lose weight, but how much of it is fat?
For sure.
As opposed to muscle mass.
Yeah, most definitely.
You could run off. I mean, that's an issue that a lot of distance runners have, is that they have to work especially hard with weight training and with strength training to compensate for all the muscle they're literally losing by doing all the running they're doing.
They do. Yeah, they have to have their high carb diet for their sport, and then they need a high protein diet to retain what muscle they do have. They don't need a ton of muscle. I've seen some guys like my size where they'll intentionally lose muscle if they're getting into an endurance sport, just because it is such a body weight based sport where you're going to get improvements in running if you just weigh less. If that weight is fat or muscle, so long as we weigh less, the body's going to go faster. Then we need to work on enduring our sport and stuff. But for me, like if I wanted to be good at running, I would 110% have to lose muscle. Like I would need to lose fat and muscle without a doubt. And that's how. That just to be a competitor, it would just have to be that way.
That's a very specific instance, though. Somebody who's competing in distance running, and they're probably doing that under the guidance of a physical therapist or a doctor or something, with trying to lose a very, very specific amount of muscle.
Sure.
But to a general person who's substantially overweight and they're going to look at running or walking, which would make more sense, or something along those lines, and they are going to do that, it's important to understand that you don't just want to simply lose weight; you want to lose fat specifically.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
I agree.
So that was your first one. My first one is, let's see. You know what? Let's do two each, because the third one we've already talked about, the one that we did here.
Okay.
How about this one? The only way to lose weight is to avoid carbs.
Oh, that's a good one.
Which we talked about a little bit, because that's kind of the carnivore diet.
Sure.
But there's a lot of misinformation out there that says that carbs are bad, and if you want to lose weight, then you have to stop eating carbs. When in fact, carbs are just they're one of the three macronutrients that are super important. And if you look at any of the three generally recommended diets by like, for example, the government, it's a healthy U.S. diet, a healthy Mediterranean diet, or what's the third one? What's the third one they recommend? I'm having a blank.
I don't even know.
Yeah, but the Mediterranean diet and
it's called like the myplate.gov sort of thing, which replaced like the food pyramid.
Replaced the food pyramid, yeah. But they recommend the Mediterranean diet a lot, and there's plenty of carbs in that. But it's good carbs. It's carbs from vegetables. It's carbs from beans, and they're the proper ratio of the food that you're taking in compared, relative to your fats and your proteins.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, carbs make up a really big portion of my diet, and even in when I'm going after a fat loss effort, my carbs are still pretty high. But yeah, that's and kind of like what we touched on. You've got I think carbs got a bad rap. Well, one, because like the Atkins diet, the fat diet back in the day. I remember my mom and stuff doing that. Hell, I think I did it at some point as like a teenager or something. I think somehow insulin got known as like this fat storage hormone, and I think people associate carbohydrates with the spike in insulin, and then we go into this fat storage thing, which insulin is just a regulatory hormone. It's coined like the storage hormone, but it regulates like how much goes where. So it's a storage hormone, it is, and it's a regulatory hormone. But I think people miss the point that, like, you're never going to, like energy in versus energy out, right? Calories in versus calorie out. It's that law of thermodynamics where you're never going to cheat it. You know, the only way to store fat is by eating excess calories. A hormone isn't going to do something magical to make you store fat that you wouldn't store. You know what I'm saying? So I think people, you know, a couple of quack doctors come out and they talk about insulin storing fat and stuff like that. And now all of a sudden carbs are bad because they spike your insulin. You know, when, as long as we're in a calorie deficit, or even, you know, maintaining weight, we should be just fine. And that spike we get in insulin actually should help to shuttle more nutrients and such to the muscle for glycogen stores to make our workouts even more awesome, so that we can expend even more energy, so that we can lose even more fat.
Bingo. Yeah.
You know, so but yeah, I think that's where that came from.
Yeah, and it's important too. A lot of people just think about carbs, they think about French fries and spaghetti, and it's so much more
veggies and fruit, and yeah, man. Yep. Yeah, all the really tasty, delicious foods people call carbs. And it's like, really, I mean, them shits are just tasty, delicious foods, dude. I don't know what to...
Yeah.
But when I think of carbs, I think of, like, when I'm looking at my diet and looking at how many carbs I get, I'm thinking of fruits and vegetables and whole grains, large in part, you know. So my like... For lunch, what do you eat? I eat a freaking sandwich. You know, I have Sara Lee low-calorie bread and light mayo that I put on very light, and then a whole bunch of lunch meat and a slice of cheese, you know. And so when I eat carbs, I do eat, you know, grains, rice, fruits, veggies, and then, yeah, I mean, a lot of the delicious, tasty foods out there.
Delicious stuff.
High carb, high fat.
And let's not forget fiber either, because fiber is a carb, and also a very large player when it comes to your insulin sensitivity and your regulating of your blood glucose. All important for everything you were just talking about.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And digestion health. And,
makes you poop good.
Hey, we all need that.
There's nothing better than dropping one of those deuces where you can get up and walk away without even have to take any toilet paper off the roll. You know what I'm talking about?
No wipers.
The no wipers, man. I mean, you got to do a check wipe just to make sure.
One of those in years. That's it, dude. The good no wiper. That's a good day.
That is a good day. I mean, you're literally smiling for the rest of the day. All right. Yeah. On that note, what's your number two? Let's do one more each.
So mine, this kind of coincides with my number one, but it was the misconception that you have to do a ton of cardio. And so, like I said, I think that coincides with like a weight loss diet. Is, you know, I have to restrict my food and do cardio, and therefore I'm going to lose weight. And it's almost like if you tell somebody like, oh, I'm trying to lose weight, and they're like, oh, cool, what sort of cardio are you doing? And you're like, none. And they're like, well, like, that's crazy, you don't know what you're doing. And it's like, no, man, not at all. So as we were talking about, it's, you know, calories in versus calories out, and I always tell folks to just change the word calorie to the word energy, because that's exactly what it is. Energy in versus energy out. And that can come in different forms, right? So we eat food for energy. We get rid of energy by activity. And so if I'm trying to go in this calorie deficit, and I'm probably already on some sort of restrictive diet that is maybe too restrictive if I'm just a regular Joe out there walking around with no guidance. If we're already in this restrictive diet, and then we're going to add more activity expenditure on top of that. I mean, shit, I could have probably just lost all my weight without exercising or doing any activity at all, just because of the crazy ass diet that I'm on. Like you doing carnivore, you would have lost a shit ton of weight without exercising, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, so then then we've got a whole bunch of things to consider, like what is our diet fatigue? How long are we going to be dieting for? How are we going to like manage those things? If I'm in a low calorie deficit and now I'm doing more activity and that puts me in an even lower calorie deficit, how quickly am I going to crash and burn on that recipe? Probably pretty freaking soon.
I love what you said about it. Instead of thinking of it as calories in, calories out, think of it as energy in, energy out. One way I like to explain that is that, your body stores fat as energy for later. That's what it is. It's for later on down the road. And it's the reason it does it is because the human body hasn't figured out yet that we have this little thing called the industrial age and supermarkets and fast food restaurants, right? As far as our metabolism goes and our bodies and the instinctual things going on inside with food digestion and metabolism, our bodies are not aware yet. We haven't evolved yet to know that there is definitely going to be bison in the fields tomorrow, right? So we have to store it, right? So do we store energy as protein? No, because protein's only got 4 calories per gram in it. Do we store it as, our energy as carbs? No, for the same reason, right? But fat's got twice as much. Fat has 9 calories per gram, right? So it makes sense to store it. You get good gas mileage off the fat, right? So
sure.
That's why I love to think about it, because if you eat, let's say you've got for easy math, let's say you got a 2,000 calorie diet, right? And so if you eat 2,020 calories, you've got a surplus of 20 calories, right? Or 20 units of energy, okay? So your body's like, awesome, this is great. I'm going to turn it immediately into fat. I'm going to store it for tomorrow because there might not be bison in the fields tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
You got to store it.
Yeah.
But then the opposite is true too. Let's say you have 1,950 calories. Okay. Well, it takes you 2,000 calories just to get through a normal day. Okay. But you've only eaten 1,950 calories. Well, now you're short. So now you got to plug into the batteries, and you got to use some of that battery storage, just like anything else. Just like, if the power goes out at your house and you got to plug in to a battery pack, to charge your phone instead of plugging it into the wall, it's the same thing. Yep. So now you're just running off fat. You start metabolizing the fat instead of the food you ate to get through the day. Now, next morning you wake up, you got a little bit less fat than you did yesterday because you had to burn it. And lo and behold, we have Publix. We don't have to go chase the bison.
Yeah. Very true. We haven't evolutionized past the industrial stage yet. I wonder when that'll happen.
I don't.
Like year 3000 or something.
I suspect that the industrial age will die and we'll go back to chasing bison before we figure it out.
I think Germany could be looking at that if they don't team up with Russia here soon, but that's a topic for another discussion.
That's a wormhole. That's a rabbit hole to go down.
Yeah. I love to hear the media on that, how they're the villains for not sacrificing their industrialization. But it's funny, and this will be a little bit of a tangent, but that's how I like to explain keto to folks is like if you're going to go start a fire in the woods, are you going to throw in these little small twigs to get your fire going, or are you going to throw in this big log? Your fat at 9 calorie per gram is the big log. Your carbs and proteins at the 4 calories per gram are the little twigs. We're going to burn those up quick for energy. We don't want to burn the others. So the thing with keto is that while on a keto diet, you do burn more fat. You burn more fat total. That's because you're eating more fat. Okay? So we're actually burning less stored fat on a keto diet than we burn stored fat in a regular calorie deficit.
Because you're eating this energy-dense fat.
Yeah, and we probably have more energy and we're moving more. Maybe our needs or our daily activity is higher. Maybe we're getting more energy expenditure out of our workouts because we have this better energy source to use and we feel better and we're doing more stuff. So yeah, so that's a good point about the fats there, and that's another point about my whole thinking you have to do a ton of cardio is like, if you're in that diet fatigue where these calories are in such a large deficit because of your restrictive diet and your cardio, now you look at your NEAT or your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or just simply the amount of daily activity we're doing in a day is going to decrease. So, you know, your wife is like, hey, sweetie, you want to get up and take out the trash? And you're like, shit, I ate almost nothing today. I did 2 hours of cardio and I'm kind of tanked. How about you take out the trash? And while it sounds minimal, like you said, we might burn maybe 2,000 calories a day of regular activity ish. Well, now that's dropped down to like 500 calories a day because we increased our calorie deficit. Now we're not doing shit at home or anywhere else. So we're walking less, we're doing less chores. When we're talking to our friends on the phone, we're sitting down instead of walking back and forth pacing. That stuff matters. And the other area that comes to mind where that stuff matters is when people consider doing a second workout session in a day, especially if their goal is fat loss. It's like, well, let's make sure that you don't do this second workout session and then the rest of your daily activity tanks and falls to shit. I'd rather see you get your steps up to 10,000 to 13,000 steps per day, have a logical calorie deficit, and strength train a couple times a week, preferably 3.
Boom.
And I feel like we're good to go. But yeah, so, and then the only other thing I have on that is that cardio is not bad. If you love it and you want to get up early in the morning and you want to go for your run, and you're not doing it for that sense of like, I'm being a man and this has valor and this is what I have to do. I have to get up early and I have to do my cardio because I'm in a weight loss diet. If you're doing it because you want to and you enjoy it, then by all means, like, do it and have fun and ride with that. But I guess that's another point, is I wouldn't sacrifice sleep for it because that'll diminish your fat loss efforts. So do you really need to get up at 5 a.m. to go for that run or not?
Also, on a quick tangent, though, if from the standpoint of cardio, one benefit cardio does have is if you have high blood pressure. It does help with that.
For sure. Yep. But so does strength training.
No. Yep.
But yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm with you. I 100% agree. I do cardio. I'm gonna run that Space Force 10 miler as a 220 pound human. So I love the shit. I was a long distance runner. I love it. But for burning calories, it's almost like putting gas in your car and then going out and driving your car with no destination for no purpose. It's
that's a great analogy,
it's probably not the most efficient thing to do, you know?
All right, I want to try to bring this in under 30 minutes, so we'll wrap it up here. I've got one last comment on the food thing, on the nutrition thing.
Let's do it.
And that is that there's two elements to nutrition. There's quantity and quality, right? And a lot of people, it seems, only pay attention to one of them. So if you're paying a lot of attention to your caloric deficit or surplus, depending on your goal, then you may just accidentally, out of human nature, forget about what those calories actually are. And the other aspect of that is true. You may focus so hard on the what that you're eating that you may not be paying attention to how much of it you're shoveling down your throat. And that's something, I mean, that's the carnivore diet. That was when I was doing that. It was all, or, you know, what a better example is people who just strictly count calories. They don't really care what the calories are. So, you know, they could have literally nothing but bacon, but as long as they're coming in under 2,000 calories a day, if that's how the math works out, then they're going to lose weight eating bacon. Which I did. I can vouch for that. But that's a shit diet. I mean, I'm not getting my vitamins and minerals. I'm not, you know, all the normal processes, my eyes, my lungs, my teeth, my hair, my fingernails, all that stuff's going to go to shit. But hey, I'm going to have the number on the scale that I want to have.
Yeah, it's not sustainable. But I would also bet that regardless of how you lost 30 pounds, if you lost the 30 pounds, that your blood pressure would be better, your cholesterol would look better. I would put money that you would have these better biomarkers at a lower body weight just because we're in a lower body weight. Obviously, that wouldn't be sustainable, you know what I'm saying? But I think we do get the biggest bang for our buck for health by our body weight. And then I think food composition and everything like that makes up a large part of being healthy, but not even close to what a calorie deficit makes. But it sure as shit wouldn't be sustainable. You know what I'm saying?
No way.
But I think no, absolutely not. It wouldn't be sustainably healthy. But from a sheer body weight perspective, I think that it's not the worst thing ever, but obviously not going to last either.
No. All right, cool. This is our first 2 Fitness Ninnies podcasts, and I'm gonna say that this one is done.
Nice. I like it.
Cool.
Let's roll with it.
We will do another one on the next time we do one.
Perfect, dude. That's what I always say. I'll see you next time.
See you next time. All right. Thanks for watching, and we'll try to put up another one next week. That's what we'll shoot for.
Sounds good, brother.
Yeah.